Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to the Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs War Room Update. We are on day number 283 of the war with Gaza, day number 282 with the war with Lebanon, and day number 270-something with the war with the Houthis in Yemen. The common thread to all of those, as we've discussed often, is that Iranian hand guiding all of its terror proxies all over the region, creating that circle of fire around Israel, all acting on behalf of Iran to forward Iran's interests in Gaza, Lebanon, Judean Samaria, Houthis, Red Sea. There are still attacks going on in the Red Sea from the Houthis. There are still continuous attacks from Lebanon and even escalating attacks from Lebanon as Israel attacks more and more of the senior members of Hezbollah. Another brigadier general taken out last week, and so that cycle of violence is continuing on all the time. And within that, you have certain events that are potentially events that could change reality. We saw one of those just a few months ago when Israel targeted and killed the IRGC commander for the troops in Syria and in Lebanon. That then caused or brought on, as they say, the Iranian attack on the night of the 13th, 14th of April on Israel directly, firing 36 rockets, missiles, ballistic missiles, UAVs at Israel. And that was really one of those watershed events. And so what we're going to discuss today with really my friend and colleague, Colonel in the reserves, Jacques Neriah, Dr. Jacques Neriah, sorry, is one of those events that happened on the last few days. As you may have seen from the news, 2 days ago, Israel potentially found Mohammed Deif. Mohammed Deif was the head of the Ezzadin al-Qassam, the fundamentalist military wing of Hamas, as if there really is a separation between Hamas. We won't get into that, but he's considered to be the head of their military wing. This is a terrorist who's been running around murdering people for almost 2.5 decades, close to 3 decades, in fact. He was already involved in the 1996 bus bombings in Israel. Since then, he went underground. He took the reins of Ezzadin al-Qassam from Saleh Shahada after he was killed in 2002. He's been the target of a number of different attempted targeting killings over the years by Israel. At one stage, there was a thought that he'd maybe been killed, but then it turned out he'd only possibly been injured. In the last few years, Hamas grandstanded him almost, showing that he was not only not injured, but actually seemed to be fully functioning. Now, this is really number 2 in Hamas in Gaza. There's Yahya Sinwar, and then there's Mohammed Deif. Some even say that Mohammed Deif on the pecking pole is higher in seniority than Yahya Sinwar, and he was potentially killed in an attack on Saturday morning. IDF forces, the Shabak intelligence had what they called breakout intelligence, showing that Deif and another senior terrorist, Raf as-Salameh, who was the divisional commander of the Khan Yunis forces, Hamas forces in Khan Yunis. He was also another terrorist who had been involved for years and years in terrorism. He played a very central part, even in the kidnapping of Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit in 2006. And since then, his status and his position has just been upgraded time after time. He inherited, as it were, the command of the Hamas divisions in Khan Yunis from none other than Yahya Sinwar. So the understanding is that these are very, very serious and senior Hamas terrorists who were, if we look at the most wanted, as it were, of the IDF for the Hamas forces, they were up there in the top 7, maybe even 6 of the terrorists who Israel wanted to set their hands on in one way or another. Mohammed Deif, Raf as-Salameh, these 2 people being taken out. We're not sure 100%. I have to caution. We're not sure 100% about Muhammad Def, but really the theory is that he was killed. The hospital around Khan Yunis has been turned into really a Hamas safe zone, and to prevent Israel being able to identify the bodies. And so those two targeted killings really could be game changers in this whole process. So on that note, Jacques, thank you for joining us. Please give us, if you can, a little bit of your insights into that event. We'll talk about also wider, on a wider scale, some other reports from Syria and Lebanon as part of that whole discussion. But first, give us a few insights on what does it mean to Hamas to lose Def, to lose Rafa Salameh, and to the morale. Can it help the negotiations for a potential deal on the hostages? Is it going to hurt the deal? Where are we going?
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. And second, I say that, I mean, the cemeteries are full of people that thought that they would be irreplaceable. And like a hydra, you know, we've seen Hamas growing heads, new heads, each time that one of their commanders have been killed and wasted by Israel. But definitely, as you say, I mean, when we are talking about Muhammad Deif, who is the architect of and the strategist of the massacre of the 7th of October, they definitely were a cornerstone of a pillar of Hamas, the founder of Izzeddin al-Qassam, the military strategist, in fact, I mean, much more important than Yahya Sinwar himself. So it means in a way that if he was there, let's suppose that he was there, he could not survive. He could not have survived the bombings of the Air Force. I mean, we saw what happened on the ground there. I mean, nobody could have survived such an attack. And if this is so, it could be that we are witnessing the first cracks in the wall of Hamas, because immediately afterwards we heard two versions. One version saying that the talks and negotiations concerning the hostages are stopped and will not continue anymore. And the day after, somebody just said no, denied that declaration, saying that on the contrary, we are continuing. Which means that the Hamas has reached a point where he understands very well that the balance is tipping in favor of Israel. And it took 10 months. It took 10 months of arduous efforts and bloody battles. But definitely we can see a change on the ground. It's been quite a while that rockets have not been fired from Gaza to the border localities of Israel. It's been sometimes where we hear, I mean, between the foggy news that the IDF is just sending us, that there's quite an advance of the troops. We have taken the control of the Philadelphia axis. We have taken the control of the perimeter around Gaza, and of course the axis of Netzarim, which cuts the Gaza Strip into two. And we are hearing here and there not only rumors, but I mean whispering that Hamas has understood that it can no more claim to be the one that will govern the Gaza Strip. And there are talks about the possibility of leaving the ground for the Palestinian Authority or anybody else. The thing is right now, as far as I understand, is the survival of what is left of Hamas. And it doesn't mean that the war has ended. Far from that. I mean, we'll be facing a guerrilla warfare for some time, but definitely I would say the infrastructure and the military structure of Hamas has been destroyed. And with the possible elimination of Mohammad Deif, I don't think that he has a replacement. And let us remember what happened with Qasem Soleimani in Iran. The same. I mean, Khani is not the same genius as Qasem Soleimani. And Imad Munir in Hezbollah has been also wasted at the time 2008, and nobody could have replaced him. I mean, there are some people that it is quite difficult to enter in their shoes. and the Muhammad Deif is one of them. Even though we are talking today of Muhammad Sinwar, Yahya Sinwar brother taking over, but it is not the same type of commander. This is not the type of the charisma and the fact that he reflects among the troops an example to be followed. So I think that, as I said in the beginning of my presentation, we are witnessing the beginning of the cracks in the wall of Hamas.
As you said, Jacques, this is one of those events that really, whilst, as you said previously before we started the broadcast, cemeteries are full of people who have no replacements. But it doesn't mean that those who come and replace those who have been killed have that same ability, that same drive. Muhammad Deif within Hamas was really a legend. He had this ability to avoid Israeli strikes, to avoid Israeli assassination attempts, to carry on fighting even when it seemed that all was lost. And really, it doesn't matter who the next person is. There's no one of his stature really that's left on the lines.
Definitely so. Definitely so. I mean, there's nobody of the same stature, of the same charisma, and the same. I mean, the same importance. And I think the radiation of leadership that he has, and the fact that he has been possibly killed is definitely immoral. I think difficulty that Hamas will have to great difficulty in living with. I mean, after all, I mean, this guy has put his input for the last 16 years, has built a military machine, and this military machine right now has lost its builder, and this is very, very important. I mean, and it comes after the return of the Israeli troops that had withdrawn a few months ago from the main parts of Gaza, and have put more pressure on Hamas. And the result is that, I mean, we are in the midst of negotiations. Maybe they will succeed, maybe they will not succeed, but definitely we are in the midst of negotiations that have not been broken because of Muhammad Deif. And this means that something is being brewing behind the scenes and in the dark corridors of power.
So, in many cases, Jacques, what the IDF does and what the Shabak does, and they did it with Rafa Salameh, is to announce that Rafa Salameh has been killed. They didn't do that with Deif, and there still remains this question mark. On the other hand, one would think that if he was still alive, considering the almost euphoria in Israel about his death, Hamas would present him to the cameras and say he's still alive, as Khalil al-Khaya, one of the senior Hamas commanders, said, you might think that he's been killed, but Muhammad Deif is sitting safely and laughing at you as you celebrate. What should we learn from that? What should we understand from that? Is it more of the bravado of let's not tell anyone, or is there a real case to say that he may have survived?
You know, Hamas has a real problem of secrecy. It has a problem of secrecy, and they don't understand, and they cannot imagine how Israel has succeeded in getting the intelligence, the pinpoint intelligence that brought this attack on Rafa Salameh and on Muhammad Deif. This is definitely something that it's beyond their imagination. They cannot understand that. And this is an advantage that we have as a state that has the powerful intelligence. And I think that this is as if we can use the words of Churchill, this is the beginning of the end. Definitely, I mean, the beginning of the end. And we have just to wait and see that the fruit is ripe right now, and it's going to fall. It's a matter of time. And right now, I mean, as we can see, the activities of the IDF in the Gaza Strip, we have again three big divisions working: one in the north, one in the in the middle of Gaza, and one in the area of Khan Yunis and Rafah. And this means that we are advancing, and there's no area left in the Gaza Strip that is not beyond the control of the Israeli troops. And this is the big difference. And I think that the mediators have understood that. And right now, according to the information that the media is just leaking, is that Hamas is trying to work out a sort of arrangement where the power, there would be a power sharing with the Palestinian Authority, with the US and international forces, maybe Arab forces. So this is the beginning, as I said, of the end, and let's wait and see what if this is indeed our appreciation, our assessment of the situation.
And that's there is that famous quote from Churchill saying that this is not it's not the end, it's not the beginning of the end, but it is perhaps the end of the beginning.
Yes,
probably the most accurate to even describe the situation that we're in. We're getting to the point. I think it's been clear from a number of different factors, getting to that tipping point against Hamas, where the Hamas leadership has understood that they will no longer return to control Gaza. The damage that has been done to Hamas forces all the way through. If we said at the beginning there were some 40 to 50,000 Hamas terrorists, we're now at that point where over half of the terrorists appear to have been killed and very much disabled. And so we really are getting to that tipping point where the scales are no longer in Hamas's favor, and that use of really force against them is proving to be quite effective. The question is this now the time to say, well, we've killed Mohammed Deif, we've killed Saleh. Just in the last week, Ronen Bar, the head of Shabak, said that we've killed another 25 of the participants in the October 7 massacre. With all of this pressure, as you said, we've taken the Philadelphia corridor, we've taken the corridor of Netzarim. Is this now the time to take our foot off the gas and to allow Hamas to enter into a deal which would possibly cause a cease or a temporary halt in the fighting on the ground?
This would be the greatest mistake that we would have made. We have to continue the pressure. The fact is, I mean, where do we understand that things have changed? We have seen the meeting between Khalil al-Hayy and Osama Hamdan with Hassan Nasrallah, and informing him that they are ready to accept the ceasefire, the conditions that were set by the United States. Of course, they have changed and they have added conditions and so on. But basically, they have agreed to stop the hostilities and to reach a ceasefire, an arrangement with Israel, and they were informing Hezbollah of this development, which is quite a revolution in the behavior of Hamas, where everybody thought that Hamas would fight to the last soldier, would just wait till the last bastion would be conquered by Israel with the last drop of blood, and that Yahya Sinwar doesn't care of the Palestinians that are killed all around. And here we see that there's a difference. Not only the difference is in the fact that that Khalil Hayy has met with Nasrallah and told him that they want to stop and they want to reach an agreement with Israel, but we have heard for the first time, accusation declared by Mahmoud Abbas, by Abu Mazen, concerning Hamas, saying that Hamas is responsible of the tragedy of the Gazan people. This is something new that we haven't heard for the last 10 months.
He's been unable, incapable, really that moral deficiency of condemning the October 7 massacre. But now at least he's coming around to the understanding that it isn't Israel that's responsible for the death. It is Hamas. It's Hamas's use of the Gazan population as human shields. It's the Hamas abuse of the humanitarian aid. It's not really Israel's fault, but rather that's an important acceptance also by Mahmoud Abbas, who really seems to be also teetering on the brink, coming to the realization that if before, I don't know, 3-4 months ago, he was talking about some type of way of bringing Hamas into the PLO and power sharing, now it appears even Abbas has abandoned Hamas, understanding that they are no longer a relevant force. Is that an accurate description?
It is, and what is definitely something that the Palestinians and their so-called alliance are looking at is as what happened in the United States only 2 days ago. The fact that the fact that Trump survived this assassination attempt is not a mere incident. They understand very well that according to their evaluation, their assessment, that the next president of the United States will be Donald Trump. And being as such, this is the man that brought the American embassy to Jerusalem. This is the one that recognized the annexation of the Golan Heights to Israel, and so on and so on. I mean, this is the one that
support to UNRWA.
Yeah, exactly so, and then the famous deal of the century there, and there are lots of things that this is happening in front of their eyes, and they cannot ignore that. This is something on the one hand. On the other hand, let us not forget the latest declaration of Hassan Nasrallah, when you can hear between the lines that they had enough of the war. They are just not going to go into an open war with Israel. They are going to suffice themselves with the attrition war, and if there is a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip, they will hold fire and they will stop firing at the Israeli localities on the border. These are significant developments, and the Hamas is taking that into consideration, and certainly is looking at their impact on their position and on their negotiating their power, which has dwindled definitely because of those developments.
So really, I think would it be accurate to say then, Jacques, that the understanding is and should be that the applying military force in the Gaza Strip to Hamas, targeting and killing its leadership, targeting and killing its soldiers on the ground, targeting and killing it and destroying its terror infrastructure, is instrumental in putting pressure on Hamas to even to get a better deal. The deal that was offered by Prime Minister Netanyahu and then adopted by President Biden, and that Hamas rejected a month and a half ago. Should that still be the same deal on the table, or should we be the ones now demanding to change it? We understand you've lost leverage. We want, I don't know, more hostages, more live hostages, all of the live hostages already at the first stage of implementation of the New Deal.
Maurice, we heard yesterday our Prime Minister saying very openly that Hamas added 29 modifications to the proposal that was presented by Israel to the United States and was presented by Biden as the Israeli proposal, and that the Prime Minister said that not even a word will be changed, and there's not accepting a word. And the Prime Minister feels very well that we are now in a better position than we were in the past, and that finally the military effort has produced a fruit, and this fruit is the willingness of Hamas to sit down and negotiate a deal. What sort of deal? They understand that in this deal, Hamas will be absent from continuing to be in Gaza. Hamas will not be the one that will have a say in the future of Gaza, and the best thing that they can arrange is a sort of power sharing with the Palestinian Authority and with the Inter-Arab Committee that would be involved in that in governing the Gaza Strip, leaving Israel the security responsibility. I don't think that there is ground today to change a position, a minimal change in the position of Israel. Israel has to stick to its position. This is the language that Hamas understands. And unfortunately, I mean, it took us 10 months to make Hamas understand that this is what we want.
When we look at the north, Jacques, and you mentioned it also in your discussion, when we look at Hassan Nasrallah and Hezbollah, we saw reports also coming that the U.S. administration's special envoy Amos Hochstein to the area said that Israel and Lebanon are really very close to a deal, to some type of a political deal that would bring about the end of the fighting there. Is that something also that Israel should be entertaining? We know that at least from intelligence that Hassan Nasrallah and Hezbollah were planning the October 7 massacre in parallel and almost without Hamas's knowledge. They have the same cross-border subterranean and terrorist tunnels. They've been attacking Israel for the last 9.5 months. Can we now again fall back on a political solution as we had in place from 2006, Resolution 1701? Is that something that a risk that Israel can take, that Hezbollah be also left intact to start the next war whenever it's convenient for them and on their terms?
Well, let me first, express my hesitation. That I will put it that way on the efforts made by Amos Hochstein. According to what we hear right now, that during the negotiations on the maritime border, he promised the Lebanese, and that they would live in a paradise, that in a few months they will have gas coming from the gas fields in the Mediterranean, and the Lebanon would flourish and would develop, and all the economic crisis will be forgotten. This, by the way, this was reported by Tony Badran, which is quite a source on the Lebanese issue. And the fact is today that the gas field that we are talking about is completely dry. There's not even a tip of gas there. And this is the way Hochstein is working. He's selling stories to Israel, selling stories to the Lebanese. He's telling us a story that 15,000 Lebanese soldiers will be deployed in South Lebanon in order to replace Hezbollah forces. And I ask myself, from where is he going to find 15,000 soldiers? The whole army in Lebanon doesn't have this amount of soldiers. So you have to train them, you have to prepare them. It will take time. So we're talking about time. And then the Lebanese army is built according to confessional brigades. You have the Sunni brigade, you have the Christian brigade, the Maronite brigade, the Orthodox brigade, the Shiite brigade. And can you imagine a moment that you will have to deploy forces that are not Shiite in South Lebanon? This will never happen. This will never happen. And now let us look a little bit at what the situation on the ground. We understand how the command, the territorial command of Hezbollah works in Lebanon. We have 5 areas. We have 5 commands, the territorial commands. We have the Nasser, the Badr, the Aziz, the Haidar, and the Ammar. The 5 things. And these are territorial commands. They have their own forces there. Their own forces are built on locals, on local inhabitants. And as Hassan Nasrallah says, he goes out of his home and he puts the uniform. He goes back to his home and he takes off the uniform. There is no possibility. There's no possibility of asking Hezbollah to withdraw from these lines, because these lines are the very villages of the Lebanese there. So we are just inventing stories, and the story is that we have Israel, I mean, in my view, is not addressing the problem as it should. Israel has to see the Lebanese government as responsible of what's happening on the Lebanese territory vis-a-vis Israel. And it's not the matter. We don't care that there is a militia or not militia. Our partner is the Lebanese government. And if the Lebanese government is not able to exert his power and his authority, then we will replace him. This is what should be should be addressed, and if we do that, and if we express this policy, then you will see how France, how the U.S., and how the world will run and reach an agreement. And in the meantime, we are letting Hezbollah doing whatever it wants. Hezbollah has its own forces. He's backed by Iraqi militias. He's backed by the Afghanistani and Pakistani militias on the Golan, by the Hashd al-Sha'bi in Iraq, by the Houthis, and then we are suffocating under this instead of pointing at Lebanon and saying, you are responsible of your territory. What are you doing? Where are you? Where is your power? And this is the big question that has to be addressed, and Hochstein has to address this issue, and not trying to tell us that we will put 15,000 soldiers in South Lebanon and Hezbollah will withdraw 8 kilometers. This will never happen.
What's amazing, Jacques, and why I was smirking while you were truly explaining the reality on the ground, how Amos Hochstein is selling one story to one people, one to the other people. And I kid you not, I just want to read you a section from the 2023 U.S. Appropriations Act. That's the budget, right? The U.S. budget includes the following provision for hundreds of millions of dollars going to Lebanon to what? Professionalize the Lebanese armed forces to mitigate internal and external threats from non-state actors, including Hezbollah. Like, how can you so delude yourselves that you have that ability to throw money at these people and then produce hundreds and thousands of Lebanese soldiers who will fight against it, who will fight against their brothers in Hezbollah on behalf of Israel and the West? How do you get to that situation?
The Lebanese army is on the American payroll. Every 6 months, $60 million are paid for the Lebanese army. Their salaries are paid by the United States. Can you imagine that? I mean, when you read, I mean, you read what you have presented for the budget. I mean, the Americans, I mean, the congressmen have to be full imbeciles or something in order to accept that, in order not to understand that the reality on the ground. I mean, and this commander of the army, he's going to Qatar, he's going to Doha, he's going to everybody, just trying to pick some money here and money there. And they're organizing helicopter tours in Lebanon in order to get money. This is what the Lebanese army is busy with, making money in order to survive. They receive from France rations. I mean, the food rations coming. I mean, as if they were refugees. This is the country you're talking about, and we are going to make a deal with this country, with this army.
So I read a report somewhere that recently that the Lebanese government, as much as there is a government, had set aside, I think it was 19 billion
93 billion pounds, Lebanese pounds, which means $1 million to be distributed on 120,000 people who have left their homes.
Exactly. $10 a family.
$8 of compensation for each family.
It's absolutely crazy that that's their financial situation, and yet Nasrallah doesn't seem to be particularly bothered by that. Is he bothered? Does he care? What are they even doing in this war with Israel? I mean, that's just a fundamental question. Set aside Iran, it's just bringing a disaster on Lebanon, southern Lebanon, to a great extent. It really is a destroyed zone. It looks no different from Gaza City. What have they gained from this war?
Well, we must not forget that Hezbollah is not a Lebanese organization. This is a movement that was founded by Iran in 1982 in order to counter the influence of Amal the Shiite movement, the secular movement, the Lebanese secular Shiite movement, and who refused to accept the authority of the Supreme Guide in Tehran. So this is the basics. Then we have to remember the famous speech by Hassan Nasrallah. What is his intention? His ideology is to turn Lebanon into another province of the Islamic Republic. This is what he wants. So what does he care about what's happening in areas that are not Shiite? He is concerned only with the areas that are populated by Shiites, which means that we are talking about the area between the Beirut-Damascus axis and southward. We're talking about the Bekaa Valley and the northern part of Lebanon. This is what interests Hezbollah. And in this area, he is the master. He has schools, he has hospitals, he has banks, he has supermarkets, and he has his audience. And his audience is captive. He has a captive audience, and who would dare just oppose him? And all those who have opposed him are now buried very deep in the ground.
Like then Prime Minister Hariri, who was clearly assassinated by Hezbollah, but it seems that from time to time, it doesn't matter how aggressive and how nefarious their actions may be, that Hezbollah just goes from strength to strength in Lebanon. It's not like there's anyone who can oppose them anymore.
Well, much of this is our responsibility. We've let this monster grow since 2006. We never attacked Hezbollah in Lebanon from 2006 and onwards. We prefer to attack, in Syria and other places, and hoping to stop the flow of weapons from Iran into Lebanon. And the result, that in 2006, Hezbollah had 10,000 missiles, and today he has about 200,000 missiles. So we haven't succeeded in stopping the flow of weapons, and this is something that we have to remember. I mean, we have a responsibility of not reacting to the provocations of Hezbollah. Let us remember what happened only a year and a half ago. Hezbollah sent drones to the Karish gas field. We didn't answer. We didn't respond. Hezbollah destroyed all the cameras on the border. We did not respond. Hezbollah just used lasers in order to blind all our observation posts on the border, and we didn't react. Hezbollah put a tent on the blue line. We did not react. And what do you think that Hezbollah could interpret all this? Only weakness. It means that he is facing a weakened Israel, and that Israel, instead of reacting as it was expected to be, Hezbollah said, Nasrallah said it very well. If Israel was what it was 30 years ago, and Lebanon was what it was 30 years ago, then this would never happen on the ground. This is the reality. All the government of Israel are responsible of this weakness, have shown weakness, and now we are taking out we are holding our heads and said, "My God, what's happening on the ground?"
And it seems that both it's not only the Israeli governments, but also the European governments, the European Union, the successive U.S. administrations that really have plowed money into Lebanon to no avail, have plowed money into the Palestinian Authority, really to no avail. I was reading a statistic just a few days ago that the European Union since 2007, wait for this, Jacques, you like it, has given the Palestinian Authority 805 million euros, almost $1 billion, for what? To improve gender equality in Palestinian society.
Yeah, well, instead of throwing all the gays from the muezzins downwards, so they just have to kill them directly with the bullets.
Exactly. You have PA preachers on Palestinian television explaining how to correctly beat your disobedient wife. That's their product for $1 billion, and there's no type of accountability. And it seems that no one's willing to actually stop and say, it's time to reassess. I think that was the fear with Donald Trump, at least of the Palestinians, that he had the courage to say, we need to stop. We need to reassess. Is this policy bringing what we wanted it to bring? Or should it be changed? And so I think that's what they most fear. But But as we wrap up, Jacques, I'll drop another little bomb on you. Syria, on Friday night into Saturday morning, there was another report of an IDF strike in Syria against terror targets there as well. Some of that was a report that it was a response to UAVs that had been fired from Syria towards Eilat. But one of the reports said that one of the terrorists killed was Ziad Nakhleh, the head of Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Another one of these very, very senior terrorists who's also been just involvement in terrorism for the last 30 years. That's what he does. That's what all he's ever done. Why would any of the sides have an interest in keeping that quiet? And it really has been kept relatively quiet. Is it because maybe the reports aren't accurate, or because nobody really wants to talk about it? What would your feelings on that be?
I will tell you, Maurice. I'm the one who called a long time ago for Assad to go. It's time for him to go, because Syria has been the springboard that allowed all this flow from Iran into the Lebanon. Syria is the main responsible, and now they are playing that we are not part of that game. You play with the Iranians, we play with the militias. We are not responsible. No, we should have had the courage to destroy the Assad regime, to destroy this man who has killed more than 500,000 of his own citizens, who has left more than 6 million refugees from Syria scattered all over the world. And this is the perfect ally of Iran. Let me remind you, in 1982, Iran sent an expeditionary force to Lebanon. It was stopped in Damascus by Hafez Assad, who understood the importance and the implication of it. And they made a tourist tour in Syria, visiting the Shiite the shrines, and they went back to Iran. Now, would Bashar Assad would be able to stop such an expeditionary force to enter Lebanon? In my view, no way. He would accept, and he would encourage, and he would say that I have nothing to do with it. I'm just only letting them go through Syria. This is the only thing that I'm accepting, I'm doing. So I think that my view is that the Assad regime should have been washed away long ago.
Is that part of the wider plan that needs to see an entirely new, I think, Middle East being created? Unfortunately, it needs to come almost like a phoenix from the ashes of the destruction, both in Lebanon, both in Gaza and in Syria. Something needs to change, because otherwise we're just going to find ourselves on this repeating cycles of never-ending violence. Nothing really is going to fundamentally be different. And it's just waiting for the next flare up, the next couple of thousands of people to be killed, murdered, massacred, whatever it may be, and whatever response. What would you say, Jacques, just as a closing message, a positive note? Where do you think we could take the Middle East from this level of really tremendous destruction on the precipice of even of an entire regional war, to a position where we would see prosperity for the inhabitants of the region?
Well, Maurice, I will answer you differently. I will answer you that my advice is toward the Israeli government. And I would use the words of Eli Wallace, saying that if you want to shoot, shoot, don't talk.
That's really, I think it has to be the understanding that not only for the Israeli government, but also for the other administrations and governments and leaders who truly would like to care about the Palestinians and the inhabitants of the region, the Lebanese, and claim to have their best interests at heart. But when you leave genocidal dictators like Bashar al-Assad in power, when you allow Hassan Nasrallah to lay waste to Lebanon and really bring about the entire destruction of Lebanon, not only the financial destruction, when you allow people like Sinwar and to run the Gaza Strip and to play into his violence and to try and pander to him when you allow Mahmoud Abbas to take the PA and turn it into this vehicle for violence and terrorism and rewarding terrorism, none of that is going to bring about peace. And so maybe it is this is the opportunity for also for not only for people like President Trump, but also for the Israeli leadership to say, it's time to stop. It's time to reevaluate. Possibly we've been going on the wrong trajectory for the last, I would say, 30 years.
But,
Since
Moise, we are living in a neighborhood which is not Switzerland, which is not Austria, and certainly not the other peaceful countries. We are living in a very bad neighborhood. We have very bad neighbors, and if we don't assess our position and our stand, we will be eaten alive with no salt, nothing.
That was the joke a few weeks ago when it was Parshat Shalach, which talks about the story of Moses sending the spies into Egypt, and God says to Moses, I'm going to take you to this land flowing with milk and honey. You'll be able to really make the desert bloom. Everything will be wonderful. And Moses turns to God and says, yeah, but what's the catch? And God says, well, your neighbors aren't such great Messiah.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, that's our position. We're living in an amazing place, in an amazing area, but our neighbors seem to be somewhat hell-bent on not enjoying the beauty of the region and its potential, and that's really something that we do need to change. Unfortunately, Jacques, as ever, it's been a pleasure talking to you, but we've run out of time, so I will say thank you for joining us. To our viewers, we will be back with you again on Wednesday this week. And until then, stay safe, everyone. Have a good evening.